What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another 5 Minute Friday. This is a series I created to help filmmakers get better at creating films just by taking 5 minutes out of their day. I mean, you should already know this by now. We're only on our third episode. Like, if you missed the other two, let's get to it. So today we're going to be talking about how to achieve the correct exposure no matter what camera you're using. This could be done just by looking at a few features that's already built into your camera. The first thing that we're going to talk about is your light meter or your exposure meter. Your camera comes with a built-in light meter, and this could be found by either pressing the shutter button on your camera while you're shooting, or it automatically pops up at the bottom of your screen. So your camera exposure meter ranges from -3 to +3, and the indicator shows you where you are on that graph. It's important to keep that indicator between -1 and +1. Anything above or below could cause your image to either be overexposed or underexposed. Now, this may be okay if you're shooting with a camera that has a high dynamic range, but to be safe, I would just stay within that range to get a clean image. What I noticed early on before I got my cinema camera and I was shooting with DSLRs, if I drop below that -1 range and try to bring the exposure up in post, it will introduce a lot of noise into my footage and make it look very unprofessional. So that could be a risk that you're running, and that's why I say just to stay above that -1 range. And you could also run that same risk with going above the +1 range, because then your highlights may be blown out, and then trying to bring that back down in post, it would just not look good at all. So just to be safe, just listen to me. Stay between that -1 and that 1 range. There is one flaw with your camera exposure meter. It exposes for the light that's being bounced off of your subject. So if I'm shooting in the middle of the day and my subject has on a white shirt, the camera sensor may read that that shot is overexposed. So I would then bring down my exposure, and now my subject face is underexposed, and I have to deal with that in post. And that leads us into the next important topic, and that's knowing what you're exposing for in your shot. Determine what the subject is and light your shot around that. Now that we have our exposure meter down packed, let's talk about waveforms. Waveforms is another tool that can help you get the correct exposure no matter what camera you're using. Most cameras come with this feature already built in, but if not, you can pick up a good external monitor that you can add on to your camera while you're shooting on set. This will help you look deeper into your waveform and adjust your exposure properly. If all of your data is sitting at the bottom of that graph, then 9 times out of 10, your shot is underexposed and you need to raise your exposure. If all the data is at the top of your graph, you then need to lower your exposure to then balance out your image. So let's jump to the computer right quick and we can look at this in more detail. Okay, so we're here in Adobe Premiere Pro, and one thing I want to make note of is that we're in the color section. This is where you're going to find all of your scopes, your histograms, your waveform monitors, things of that nature. So what I was telling you guys earlier, if we're shooting it on set and we have our waveform monitor up, you will be able to see this on your camera or your monitor. So as I'm on set, what I'm paying attention to is this graph and making sure my data isn't below 0, because if it's below 0, then I'm crushing my blacks and then it doesn't look good at all. Or if all my data is too far down within this section, it just looks dark and I wouldn't be able to restore any of this information. And I'm also making sure that I'm not clipping my data as well, going above 100, because if I boost everything above 100, then it starts to look, like this, and you don't want that. So it's just very important to just pay attention and make sure all your data falls within the 0 to 100 range. And then when you get in post, you can manipulate it whichever way you want to really bring up the highlights or bring down the shadows. And one thing about the camera that I use, which is the C100, is great with dynamic range. So I shot this with a cinema profile, so it was able to keep all my data within that 0 to 100 range, and I could go in and color grade it to my liking. I want to show you guys another image, another video that I shot on a Canon 80D before I got my cinema camera. And I was really trying to expose for my subject here. I had the right idea, but I just went about it the wrong way. I really wanted to make sure that my subject was shown and he wasn't too dark and the shadows wasn't overpowering. But I also clipped my image in the process of doing that. If you can see up here in the 100 range that my image is clipped, and there's no way I could restore that. I can bring down the exposure, but it's clipped. So as you can see here, this would never ever get that data back. And that's also due to not really having a camera with good dynamic ranges well, and I knew that, and I was trying to overcompensate for that, and that's the time of going off. So but yeah, so we could definitely probably go into this a lot more later at a later date. I'll probably make a video diving into this deeper. But we hit our 5 minutes for the day, so I hope you guys learned something. Thank you guys for checking in, and we'll go over more. Like, drop a comment, like, subscribe. If y'all rocking with it, I'll do more of these and go into more detail. So peace out.